I think it was put the best recently, the subject matter I'm going to give this afternoon of anybody, by Dr. Bob Arnett. He is a medical editor of CBS. He was on the Dan Rather Show, and he made the statement, we are on the verge of a medical disaster. There are some catastrophic things taking place in the medical world today. One of them was on the front page of the Seattle newspaper. And this one, of course, just recent. Probably you saw it. The title of it is Deadly Microbes, Major Threat. Listen to part of the first paragraph, if you will. A hit movie, Outbreak. A best-selling book, The Hot Zone. The cover of Time magazine. Revenge of the Killer Microbes. No wonder people worry about what's going on down here. Wild viruses, bacteria, and on it goes, talking about a horror story right on the front page of your own Seattle newspaper. I'm sure that you probably saw it on the front cover of Time magazine. It was the major story. Inside, page after page, it says, Revenge of the Killer Microbes. Are we losing the war of infectious diseases? Of course, the answer to that, I think you already know. USA Today put it very well. Ancient ills return with a vengeance. I could hardly believe what I was reading. Cholera, diphtheria, TB, plagues, disease associated with days long ago. They call up the images of Dixon's poverty. Consumption-ridden denizens of Hell's Kitchen. This is right on the front page of USA Today. They're the stuff of the history books, and they're back. We thought we had vanquished plagues, didn't we? But the front page of USA Today did a marvelous job of explaining it. In fact, this one frightened me because I traveled so much. It's the top headline, and it said, Spread of TB aboard airliners confirmed. He goes on to tell a story that startles me as I fly at 35,000 feet, enclosed cabin of that airplane. And it says that there is a new strain of tuberculosis out there now that is impervious to many or most of the modern day drugs. It says that a person could be aboard that airplane. 80% of the air is being recirculated. They could be positive with this new strain of TB. They cough. It becomes airborne, gets into the air handling system of the airplane, and from San Francisco to New York, every person aboard that jetliner could be contaminated with a new strain of TB that in many cases doctors do not know what to do with it. This one was out of the Houston Chronicle. Microbic war. Humans may be losing the battle of infectious diseases. Losing? I thought the medical profession was winning. Well, they have tried for many years, haven't they? Well, this one out of the Salt Lake City Tribune. Ancient diseases hanging around just to bug us. What a title. And it goes on to say, plague is terrifying India. Tuberculosis mounts in the United States. Malaria has a stronghold on Africa. Cholera and dysentery on the march in Russia. I thought these things had all been vanquished. Could it just possibly be that they're back? Well, according to the Star Tribune, we are approaching an era of killer bugs, and it could be a disaster. Now, if I didn't see whose name was on this, I might doubt the reliability of it, but it's none other than Michael Cohen of the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta, Georgia, the leading agency of the United States government that monitors what's happening to the deadly diseases. I never thought I would see it in Fortune magazine. It says killer microbes. Bacteria have developed a scary resistance to antibiotics, spawning deadly infection doctors sometimes can't treat. You mean to tell me that a doctor goes out into the medical profession now and he knows there are certain things he can't treat? Well, this one was great in none other than Newsweek magazine. The end of antibiotics. Oh, I thought they were good for everything. Well, listen to what it says further. Scientists thought it had vanquished diseases, but in 1992, 13,300 hospital patients died of infections that resisted every drug doctors tried. Startling. We're facing some unusual things, aren't we? This one, just over the last few days out of Natural Health. Defend yourself against superbugs, and it draws a picture, which is about the best way to describe it I've ever seen. It shows a group of antibiotics over here, a whole bunch of them. And all of a sudden, one of these new wonder drugs is given to someone. It kills all of them except one. That one is called a super germ. And that super germ multiplies, and listen to what they state, how it can multiply, at the rate of 16 billion in only 24 hours. So you see, we have drugs. Then we have bugs that become immune to those drugs. Then we create super bugs. So medical science creates super drugs. Then the bugs become super bugs. And the first thing you know, you need super drugs. But what are those super drugs going to do to the human body? Well, the Sedalia Democrat put it quite well. In fact, it says, hospital is battling drug-resistant bugs, and it goes on to state that antibiotics are losing their punch and that hospitals are becoming the places to catch things that you didn't have when you went there. In fact, medical science is telling us now that 30% of all the people who go to a hospital, they get well from what they went to the hospital with, and they go back home with something they didn't have when they went to the hospital. Well, Salt Lake City Tribune put it quite well. Wonder drugs are losing against bacteria. Hospitals are becoming places to catch immune-resistant infections. Well, maybe we won't need to go to the doctor or the hospital anymore. Possibly you need to consider taking care of your own health. Well, here's another one right out of Orlando, Florida, from the Associated Press. More germs in hospitals become drug resistance. Listen to the first few sentences in this one. Germs resistance to antibiotics are growing at an alarming rate. Doctors fear pneumonia, blood infections, other ills. What at one time was a routine infection has now become a killer. About 85% of all types of bacteria have become resistant to multiple drugs. What have we created? Well, Time magazine put it the best, I think, in this article I've ever seen. It says nearly every disease organism known to medicine has become resistant to at least one antibiotic. So what happens? You go to the doctor. You expected him to give you something. Well, he does. After all, that's what he's supposed to do, is give you something to get you well. So he gives you a prescription to take down to the drugstore, and you get it filled, and you take it. The next week, you're not any better. You go back. What does he do? Gives you another prescription for another drug. After all, last week's drug now, the bugs are immune to it. So you pay him the same price again for the next office call, but he gives you another prescription, and you take it down and try another drug. After a while, before you die, you might be able to get the drug that'll take care of what you have. But if you don't, what happened? You become a statistic. Possibly you'd like to think about an alternative to what you can do in taking care of yourself. Well, more and more are turning to alternative medicine. Well, this one is from Vegetarian Times. It's entitled Swearing Off. Might a human epidemic of antibiotic-resistant bacteria be rooted in feeding time down on the farm? And this article goes on to tell a startling story of the fact that the animals, you can't afford to lose one. After all, there's not enough profit margin. So as soon as a calf is born, what do they give the calf? Antibiotics, drugs, steroids, hormones, everything imaginable, in order to make sure that that calf becomes a cow and gets to the slaughtering house. 30% more drugs are given to animals than are given to humans. And then we go and buy the meat and eat it. And what do? It's almost like going to the doctor for an antibiotic. And this goes on page after page after page. Well, there was a very, very reputable doctor, and when you listen to his credentials, you'll understand why he became so alarmed about this. He is Dr. Ronald N. Jones. He is the professor and the director of Medical Microbiology Division of the Department of Pathology of the University of Iowa of Medicine in Iowa City, Iowa. He said, I must tell the truth from a medical standpoint. He got 43 labs across America to cooperate with him, and for many, many months they tested all of the modern day bugs. Every germ that's popular today, they tried it. This was listed on one side of the page. Then they went on the other side of the page and listed how many modern day drugs those bugs are resistant to. And the article was published only a few months ago in a very prestigious medical magazine entitled entitled Diagnostic Microbiology and Infectious Diseases magazine. And at the end of the article, Dr. Ronald Jones stated, the severity of the danger has been suppressed. Well, they never offered a course like this one before in any college in America. In fact, no medical students have ever been given this course up until this year. It was offered by none other than the University of Wisconsin Medical School. Yeah, this is the folder that they actually give to the medical students, to the men that are studying to be doctors. And the title of the course is, now mind you, never offered before ever in the history of the world to medical students. The title of the course is Infections That Do Not Respond. Wouldn't you love going into a profession where they're telling you right in the college that you have nothing to give a person that will respond to certain of these diseases? I would think that would be somewhat of a helpless feeling, wouldn't you? Well, there's an entire book written on the subject by a number of very prestigious doctors entitled Emerging Infections, Microbial Threats to Health in the United States of America. I just have the front cover of the book there photographed for use up here. Well, I see some of you sitting on the edge of your chairs already. Maybe at this point I should give you some hope. Huh? Yeah. In fact, let me quote you a scripture because you know that would best emphasize what I'm trying to say. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth will scare you to death. I knew you needed that smile. There's getting some real serious looks out there. No, ye shall know the truth, and the truth will keep you awake at night. No? What does it say? Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you. Now, what is it that truth does? Winston Churchill, the great old orator of England some years ago, put it the best of any man I've ever heard. He said, at some point in life, everyone stumbles over truth. Most people get up, brush themselves off, and go on about their business as if nothing had ever happened. But I'm sure that's not the reason you're here today, or the reason you may be watching this videotape, because you see, truth should never frighten. Truth only informs. And when truth informs, then you can go home and do something about it. Someone said to me the other day, Lindsey, doesn't it scare you to death to know what you know? And I said, quite to the contrary. It would frighten me if I didn't know what I know. Because if I know the truth, I can do something about it. If I don't know the truth, my wife and family could be dead when that particular virus or bacteria breaks out in our modern day world that will sweep through the population. And it was said so plainly on 2020 here a few months ago when they did a full 1-hour program and they were interviewing a reputable medical authority of the United States government, if I remember correctly. And the statement was, what is going to happen? When will it take place? Could it take place now? And the person responded by saying, it's not a matter of if. It's only a matter of when. That particular virus or bacteria or fungus will break out in our modern day world that because of modern day travel will sweep the world. After all, you can travel from country to country in jet aircraft in a matter of hours, and a person positive with a certain disease can transmit it to another country. The world has never known this before in its history. Therefore, we face the potential today of something that all of history and mankind has never faced before. And they said it's not a matter of if, it's only a matter of when that particular virus, bacteria, or fungus will break out that will sweep the world and millions of people will die possibly within a matter of weeks. Why? What's happening? Well, let me try to capsulize it, if I may, for a moment or two. 40 to 50 years ago, medical science made an about-face. Up until that time, all medical science had was what we call today alternative medicine. Bark, leaves, herbs, things that you get from nature. You remember the day and time that grandmother would go out in the field, get some herbs, or great-great-grandmother, I guess it would be now, would go out in the field and get some herbs and make a poultice and put it on the chest of someone who had pneumonia, and the first thing you know, they got well? Well, that's what we call alternative medicine. It's natural sources of healing. And up until 50 years ago, that's all medical science had. And that's all they had for thousands of years. And all of a sudden, medical science made an about-face. They decided to go to the magic bullet, the first one being penicillin, then antibiotics, then vaccinations. Well, I think medical science honestly thought that they were going to vanquish plagues from the face of the earth. Now, note very carefully, I am not critical of modern-day medical science. I think that medicine actually thought that they would vanquish plagues, and for a period of time, they did. After all, it used to be the march of dimes for TB, didn't it? What is it today? Not the march of dimes for TB anymore. Now it's for something else. Why? Oh, just one of our modern day drugs, and TB's all taken care of, right? Wrong. Until 2 years ago, that all changed. What happened? The bugs started fighting back. You see, we filled these bodies so full of antibiotics. We gave them so many vaccinations. We gave all of these same substances to the animals. And then we ate the meat. And what did we create? A monstrosity. I don't think medical science knew what they were doing, but they created a medical nightmare that we are facing today. So what do we have now? We have the plagues back again. What do antibiotics do to the body's immune system? Help me out, if you will. Yeah. What do vaccinations do to the body's immune system? What do all of our modern day drugs, whatever they may be, do to the body's immune system? What does eating white flour and white sugar do to the immune system? What does eating in most of your fast food restaurants do to the body's immune system? What does the pollution of our atmosphere do to the body's immune system? And if that wasn't enough, they went a little further with me, because you see, I came from the generation where doctors had never discovered yet what parts of the body were parts of the immune system. So when my tonsils became inflamed, the doctors said, well, let's just pull them out. After all, that came from Charles Darwin in evolution. Now, I claim no kinship to apes, therefore I refuse to accept that. So what they do? They pulled out my tonsils. After all, they say you don't need them. 20 years later, they tell us that the tonsils are a major part of the body's anatomy, immune system. Well, they said, well, the adenoids are right close to the tonsils, so why don't we get them at the same time? So while they pulled the tonsils out, they got the adenoids. What are the adenoids there for? They're likewise a part of the body's immune system. Then one day, I got a pain in my side, and the doctor said, oh, that's left over from the era when the intestine was longer in an ape. That's what Charles Darwin said. So there again, I still don't agree with him. And so they took out my appendix. And now what has the doctors discovered 20 years later? The appendix is a part of the body's immune system of the intestine, and is a major part of that body's immune system and that part of the anatomy. So what do I have? I will always, all of my life, fight the battle of building my immune system, because medical science took out of it some of the major parts of the defense mechanism. You see, God didn't make any mistakes, did He? He knew what He was doing. He gave us something to protect ourselves, and if we kept it strong enough, it would be able to overcome contact with any of these bugs. What is it? It's better known as an immune system. But what have we done with it? Drugs did what to it? Vaccinations did what to it? Modern day pollution did what to it? In all of these things, we've brought ourselves to the position where now the bugs are fighting back. So what did they do? The proper term for this is a microbial mutation. And I'll use the expression that Newsweek magazine used. He said the bugs are fighting back. The bugs couldn't live any longer. We'd vanquished plagues. So the bugs said, we want to live in those bodies too. There was only one thing to do: mutate. The first one that frightened us was TB, and now it's epidemic proportion in some of the inner cities of America. So the TB bug decided it would change to a new form. Oh yes, the same symptoms. They call it the same thing, but it doesn't respond like it used to the drugs that doctors would give it. So now, if they don't catch it within a certain period of time, you're in trouble. So where are we? We have created a medical nightmare.
It's a reality of the 1990s few might have predicted. The practitioners of high-tech medicine looking with concern at images of old enemies, some presenting grave new dangers. Diseases caused by bacteria are making an ominous comeback.
It's simplistic to think we have everything under control because the bugs are smart. They change.
Those smart bugs are disease-producing microbes, changing in ways which have sent a shudder through the entire medical community. A new form of tuberculosis has emerged, first in big cities, now in smaller towns. Conventional drugs cannot control it, nor can penicillin knock out a drug-resistant strain of gonorrhea, now found among prostitutes in many communities. And a type of Group A strep has apparently mutated into an extremely deadly organism.
It looks like they have picked up the gene for making the toxin that Staphylococcus used to cause the toxic shock syndrome.
How about what you're doing?
The lethal strep claimed the life of Muppet creator Jim Henson in 1990. Despite the best medical care, Henson's death, like many other victims, came with terrifying speed.
Hours, really. We see patients go from being alive to being dead within 24 hours.
At the same time, an old streptococcal enemy has returned with a vengeance, striking this family in northern Utah. It was 1985 when Kimberly Barnes became very ill.
It was just the flu, everybody thought. That's what everybody kept telling me.
What Kimberly had was not the flu. It was rheumatic fever caused by a strep infection. Her life was threatened by a disease many believed had all but disappeared.
You know, you heard that it was a disease, but you hadn't ever heard anybody getting it or anything, and all of a sudden, here it was. Our doctor told us that this was the first case he'd ever seen.
Unlike many physicians, pediatric cardiologist George Vesey had seen a lot of rheumatic fever, at least its devastating effects on the heart. 60 cases flooded into Primary Children's Hospital in 1985. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Dr. Vesey was the first in the nation to sound the alarm. A deadly old enemy had returned.
Who would have ever predicted that we would see this horrible outburst of this disorder? We were totally unaware of it.
Kim's infection was not caught in time. It seriously damaged her heart. Surgery was required. An artificial heart valve was needed to save her life.
If she hadn't have had the surgery, she would have died. No ifs, ands, or buts.
A healthy dose of penicillin early on may have prevented Kim's heart problems. Now she must take the drug every day in order to prevent a potentially fatal return of the disease.
There's no doubt antibiotics save lives, but sometimes these magic bullets don't hit their intended target.
In fact, there's growing evidence they are creating a new generation of deadly microbes. We'll look at that when Images continues. Antibiotics, medicine's magic bullets. When Alexander Fleming discovered the first, penicillin, over a half-century ago, it seemed disease-producing microbes would soon be conquered.
Ironically, it's the widespread use, some would say overuse of these drugs, which may be creating even greater dangers.
We're sort of creating a new population of bacteria and infections.
And some of these are pretty nasty.
Some of them can be very nasty, associated with a high incidence of death.
Antibiotics have forced some germs to evolve, killing many but leaving those which have undergone genetic changes alive and well. Mutations that not only mean drugs are less likely to kill the bacteria, but the bacteria may in fact be more likely to kill us.
We're creating Godzilla bacters, and they are being created from dysfunctional medical thinking.
Specialists in infectious disease are warning antibiotic use is out of control, overprescribed for humans, dumped by the ton into animal feed. Practices that could produce superbugs no drug will be able to kill.
New ones will develop, and they will learn how to survive around the magic bullets we shoot at them.
The result could be disease and death spreading like wildfire. A science fiction nightmare could become a global reality.
A single organism could do it. But in fact, there isn't an organism on Earth. You mean there didn't used to be?
It's certainly a theoretical possibility, and it looks more like a real possibility all the time.
Developing new vaccines and other means of blocking the progression of disease without killing microbes or forcing them to change is considered the better long-term answer.
Hands should be washed with soap and running water for 10 to 15 seconds.
Preventing the spread of germs is also important, especially in hospitals, where 1 out of 20 patients nationwide are infected while under treatment.
Even in this year of sophisticated medical care, the single most important factor to minimize the transmission of infections in the hospital is good hand-washing practices.
Conditions are now ideal for a microbial disaster. Cities are increasingly crowded. Children exchange drug-resistant germs in schools and daycare centers. The elderly pick up and transmit infections as they move back and forth between nursing homes and hospitals. And jet aircraft make pockets of disease, even in the most distant corners of the world, only hours away.
The travel that's frequent is bringing us drug-resistant strains from other countries and spreading them within the United States.
It's clear effective old methods as well as innovative new strategies need to be applied. Otherwise, these microscopic enemies may soon present some immense new dangers. Jerry Anders for Cover Story.
I do not blame modern-day medicine. I actually think that doctors and modern-day medicine and scientists thought that they were doing a favor to mankind and would vanquish plagues for all time and eternity. But now I will let you decide, as I go through the new things that did not exist 5, 2, 10 years ago. So every time you see a yellow flag, this one says, newly discovered virus killed horses and trainer. Did you hear about it? Oh, yes. It says a new virus that killed 14 horses and their trainer in Australia. Now, here's the startling part in the second paragraph. It's the first new virus in that family since the 10th century. In other words, this is the first time that this virus has mutated to the knowledge of medical science since the 10th century. They don't even know what to call it yet. Why? The bugs are fighting back. This one out of the Arizona Daily Sun, that one, by the way, was the front page of USA Today. This one out of the Arizona Daily Sun, it's entitled Fungus. Oh, this is my second flag, by the way. You're counting them as we go along. You'll see just how many new things we are facing in our modern day world. Fungus emerges as a major health hazard. This is out of Flagstaff, Arizona. And it says that there's a new fungus in the operating rooms of hospitals. Doctors don't know what to do about it. I was in the home of a medical professional in Mesa, Arizona the other day, sitting in the living room, just us. And the person looked across the room at me and said, Chaplain, have you heard about the new fungus that's in the operating rooms of some hospitals in America? And I said, yes, just out of one newspaper. They said, well, we're scared to death. We don't know what to do about it. There's no known disinfectant will touch it. Doctors are talking very quietly. We don't necessarily care that the public knows. Why? Because now you can go to the hospital, have an operation performed on you, the operation be successful, you go home and die from a fungus that you picked up in the operating room because there's no known disinfectant will touch it. It's a new mutation of something that they were able to kill at one time. Next flag. Lung Association, TB. It says the American Lung Association has asked Congress now to appropriate $91 million to battle a disease that we thought had been vanquished. Well, Parade Magazine, you get it in most of your major newspapers across the country. Parade Magazine put it this way. It says, can we stop tuberculosis again? Stopped it once, but the bug wanted to live too. I was on radio station WWDB in Pennsylvania just recently with Irv Homer. He had asked me to do a 1-hour program on my book, You Can Live. He wanted me to talk about the deadly new diseases. We were halfway through the show. We stopped for commercials. You know how they do. Halfway through, the microphone was off. He looked across the studio at me and he said, Chaplain, I would not go into the inner city of New York for any amount of money. I said, Irv, why not? You're less than an hour and a half away. He said, that's correct. He said, the new strain of tuberculosis, the deadly new strain, the one that is impervious to most of our modern day drugs, he said it is epidemic proportion in the inner city of New York, and he said you could not pay me enough to go there and ride a subway or walk around on the streets because it's too dangerous. I said, Irv, we're going to come back on the air in just a moment. Would you dare to say that over the radio? He said, not on your life. I said, why not? Because he said, my program reaches into the inner city of New York, and I could be told that I started a panic. He said, I don't dare say it. Well, I think the September issue of Time magazine put it the best I've seen yet. It talked about a very affluent area of Southern California. In fact, it was a suburb of Los Angeles, a place called Westminster, California. There was a 16-year-old Vietnamese immigrant who had left her country and came to California and entered the school, the high school there. She didn't know that she had the new strain of TB. She had a cough, but so what? Oftentimes you do. She didn't know she had the new strain of TB, but it became airborne. It got in the air handling system of the school. Read it right here, Time magazine. That's not a tabloid, is it? Very reputable magazine. And it got into the air handling system, and 400 approximately young people, or about 30% of the student body, tested positive for TB, and 12 of them have now been diagnosed as the new drug-resistant strain. And some may die. Well, what happens in Southern California if they find out that you have this new strain of TB? You go to a hospital and you decide you don't want to stay in the hospital. You know what you have and you want to go home. They won't let you. This, by the way, is out of the Stockton, California newspaper, and it says in Stockton, California, it is such an epidemic until they will arrest you and detain you in the hospital if they find that you have the new drug-resistant strain of tuberculosis. This one came out of the Orange County Register of Southern California, and it says, this is the actual right out of the newspaper, and it says there, they will detain patients whom they find have the new strain of TB. I never thought I'd see it in the Journal of the American Medical Association, but here it is. They're warning doctors about this. They're saying, men, you have a problem out there, and here it is right out of the Journal of the American Medical Association, the latest report on the new strain of tuberculosis. Come on now, put a smile on your face. You're on the edge of your chair again. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth will... It's scaring you to death. No. Truth never frightens. Truth only informs. Now put a smile on your face, because I'm going to the next flag. And it's a picture of none other than Mr. Bouchard. Oh yes, you know who he is. Premier of Canada. Lost his leg. You did hear about it, didn't you? They amputated it. Why? He had the new flesh-eating disease. He can eat 1 inch of flesh per hour like Pac-Man. And Mr. Bouchard got a sore on his leg. They couldn't stop it, and they finally amputated his leg. I was in Denver, Colorado last summer when this first episode of the new flesh-eating disease hit Colorado. You do remember it started in England, then went to Canada, then came into the United States. And now it's swept around the world. And I was in Denver, Colorado when they had the episode there with the lady who went to the emergency room one afternoon and she had a sore spot on her arm. So they looked at it, and the doctors, the medical professional was rather concerned. He said, I think you'd better stay overnight in the hospital and let us do some blood work on you. So sure enough, she said, I will. But by the next morning, before the blood work ever had time to come back, before the cultures or anything else could be grown, this thing had grown so on her arm until they recognized it as the new strep A flesh-eating disease that doctors had never seen prior. Oh yes, strep A has been around for long as doctors have known, but not the new mutated form. Oh yes. They tell you, don't worry about a thing. We can take care of it with drugs. Well, they couldn't with this lady. By the next morning, it had eaten so much of her arm until before they could even get the blood work back, they rushed her into the hospital operating room and amputated her arm. By the time they had amputated her arm, it was mid-afternoon, it had spread to her breast. They amputated her breast. By the time they finished to her breast, it was spreading to other parts of her body. It undoubtedly had gotten into the blood system, and the Denver Post finally said they put her in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber, hoping to stop it. It finally hit the front page of none other than USA Today, and I'm not quite sure what ever happened to the lady. And then it hit Minnesota. No, not the old form, a new form. Did you hear about it? No? I was there. Week before last, I was in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and believe you me, they are concerned. You see, it was strep A for all these years, and doctors could deal with it. Then it was Pac-Man form, an inch of flesh per hour last summer. That was external. You could see it. It was a sore on the outside. For the first time, to my knowledge, from what medical professionals told me that I talked with when I was in Minnesota, they have never before in the history of medicine seen the new form of strep A that broke out in Minnesota. No, it doesn't eat externally so you can see it when it starts. In turn, you get sick and you think you have a cold. And it eats the muscle tissue internally in the body. So they told me that from the time it begins eating, you have 3 days to catch it. If you don't, there's no known drug can stop it, because it begins to release toxins into the bloodstream and you're dead. In a little town called Winnemingo, Minnesota, 4 people died in 1 week's time, and then it spread to Iowa. Well, someone right here in your own state wrote it. I think it's so very well put. I'll give you his name as I read just one section of the article. We are definitely experiencing more aggressive infections, says Dr. Stennis Stevens, a professor of medicine at the University of Washington in Seattle. It's a new and dramatic phenomenon. The worst part is because it's not mandatory to report the new strep A, or flesh-eating disease, to the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta, Georgia. Therefore, we do not know how many cases there have been across America. But I pick it up as I go from city to city. Well, the next flag, it's called AIDS. Oh, we've become accustomed to it, haven't we? It's just a way of life. Well, listen to the latest reports from the World Health Organization in Geneva, Switzerland. An estimated number of full-blown AIDS cases in the world has increased to 4 million from 2.5 million in only the past 12 months. Well, Lorraine Day, you know who she is? Oh, marvelous lady. I have a great admiration for her. One of the leading surgeons of Southern California. She quit her medical practice. She's written books and produced videotapes, and she's warning the world about the danger of AIDS. And Lorraine Day said, new research reports have shown a higher concentration of HIV virus found in saliva and the respiratory system than is found in the blood. Contrary to earlier reports, kissing, coughing, and can be hazardous to your health. Social touching, hugs, handshaking, and eating food in modern-day restaurants. I happened to be on the platform with Lorraine Day in San Jose, California recently. We both were lecturing in the same afternoon. And I truly mean a privilege. I have never heard such well-documented material. A lady that the medical profession cannot doubt because of her credentials. She is a part of them. And Lorraine Day gave an illustration that I thought was the most astonishing and convincing I'd ever heard. Now, because of modern day computers, you know, they can calculate everything, keep all the records. So it seems that the restaurants across America who have salad bars have actually gone so far as to calculate how many times in a given day a person is cutting up salad at a salad bar and nips their finger and bleeds. Now, there's no requirement whatsoever to test these people to see what germ they may have, because after all, you'd be discriminating against us that don't want AIDS, right? So they nip their finger while they're cutting up the salad bar and just put a Band-Aid on it and keep right on going. Well, Lorraine Day says that a AIDS virus, or the AIDS, can remain on a dry surface for 7 days and on a damp surface for 14 days. She said in her periodical, we took a 70% alcohol solution, poured it over the AIDS virus for 20 minutes, and it was still alive and well and kicking. It might cause us to think twice about where we stop to eat on our way home today. Well, here's a doctor in Florida, a dentist, I'm sorry. 6 of his patients were tested for AIDS. He had it. No blood contact. I never thought I'd see this in Red Book. Never. Page after page after page in Red Book. Secular publication. It says, a new AIDS mystery. No one wants to discuss them, but 688 people in the United States, some of them children, claim to have contracted AIDS without knowing how. No sex, no needles, no blood transfusions. Could there really be another method of infection? I never thought I'd see it in a book like that. Well, what are they calling the hospitals of America? An AIDS war zone. Many medical professionals are afraid for their job. And then it happened. A cure for AIDS on the front page of USA Today. Oh, that got your attention. Yeah. In fact, I saw some folks look up real quick. Yes. There is a cure for AIDS on the front page of USA Today. Would you like the date? Yes. The date is Thursday, March the 30th, 1995. Well, you don't believe me, do you? You might have seen it. Sure. In fact, it's right down here in this little blue box that USA Today is doing such a great job of now. It looks great. And it says, AIDS virus in 2 infants disappeared in months. Then it goes on to tell you why. Oh, yes, the mother had AIDS. The children were born, tested positive for AIDS. Within a few months' time, the doctors retested the children. The children weren't given anything unusual, and they were well. And the front page of USA Today gives the cure for AIDS. You're with me, aren't you? I'm going to read, yeah, that got you. I'm going to read it verbatim. Here it is. A small amount of the virus infected the baby, fought by a maturing immune system. What's the cure for AIDS? There it is right there. Well, I must quote a scripture again. You know, the Bible's always right. What does it say? The love of is the of all. Now I'm going to read you the cure for AIDS from the International AIDS Conference in Berlin, Germany. Oh yes, we had representatives there from our own government here in the United States of America. And I took out of the minutes of the International AIDS Conference verbatim a cure for AIDS. Let me give you the date on this, because I'm sure you're going to want to look this one up. I'm sure you remember the AIDS conference that was held. There were representatives from all over the world there. It hit the news media all across America all weekend long. June the 9th, 1993, International AIDS Conference in Berlin, Germany, verbatim, word for word from their minutes, quote, "A large group of women prostitutes have been discovered in Africa. Each prostitute has had numerous encounters with men who have AIDS. Not one has contracted AIDS. Studies show that the women have been found to have exceptionally strong immune systems. This is the only difference between these prostitutes and others who have contracted AIDS. Scientists will now try to invent a drug which will imitate a strong immune system." What do drugs do to the immune system? They kill both the good and the bad flora. And what emerges? The superbug. So you produce super drugs. So the bugs become super bugs. So what have we created? Things like this. It never had a name up until the time that doctors discovered it. In fact, it first appeared in the Four Corners area. You remember the Four Corners mystery illness? And they called it that for weeks because doctors had never grown a culture on it before. They had not the slightest idea what it was. Then they called it the Hunter virus. And now it's spread all over America. This is an article in Laboratory Medicine, very prestigious medical magazine. What is it? It's a mutation. Oh yes, a similar bug has been around for a long time, but not in its new form. I'd say the bugs are fighting back, wouldn't you? Now this is a financial newspaper, Wall Street Journal. This is not a medical magazine. I never thought I'd see it on the front page. An entire column on the front page of Wall Street Journal talking about the new Hunter virus and how it's spreading all across America. Well, now in Denver, Colorado, near the Four Corners area of Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, and Utah, they know good and well in Denver, Colorado that the Four Corners mystery illness is not dead by any stretch of the imagination. So the editor of the Denver Post went to the health department of the state of Colorado and they said, "We'd like to publish in our newspaper how many states the Hunter virus has spread to and how many people have died from it." And I'm going to quote, I wouldn't dare elaborate here, I'm going to quote verbatim what the person from the Colorado Health Department said to the editor of the Denver Post when asked how many states has it spread to and how many people have died. Quote, "We don't want people to get hysterical." And they refused to answer the question. Next flag. Remember what the men came back from the Middle East with? Some strange new something. Yes. In fact, here's a serviceman being interviewed, and he said, "We all got that anthrax shot." So they can't just explain it away that everybody is getting sick. Well, Yvonne Hewitt Vaughn knows why. Yvonne Hewitt Vaughn was a service medical doctor and refused to give the shot. She said it's contrary to the Nuremberg Code. And she said, "Unless you'll let me tell the service personnel what I'm giving them, I won't give it to them." They gave her 30 months in jail. She has 3 children. The largest of any sentence given to anyone during the Middle East War. Well, what's the latest? According to the Washington Times, approximately 657,000 personnel served in the Middle East. As of today, 72,000 approximately have reported to the VA that they have the new mystery illness. Next flag. Oh, I thought we had vanquished infectious disease. Right? Oh, we had up until a few years ago. But now the bugs have some different ideas about this. Instead, we have Outbreak movie? Did you happen to see it? Hot Zone, written by Richard Preston. Top 20 bestseller lists in America today. You must read it. If you want to go further than what I'm saying today, read Richard Preston's book. Now, he's not a medical doctor. No. He never went to medical school. He was a writer for one of the leading newspapers of America. He took off from his job and went and wrote a book for 2 years. Came back and told the world the truth, just like I'm trying to do today, and like we're doing over these videotapes and to audiences day after day after day. We are on the verge of a medical disaster, and the world had best get ready, because it's not a matter of if. It's only a matter of when that particular virus, bacteria, or fungus will break out in our modern day world, whereby people can travel from country to country in a matter of hours on jet aircraft, and it will sweep the country, and we will have another black plague. Similar to the 1800s, that's what Richard Preston said. Outbreak, by the way, was not fiction. It was fact. Well, the next one. Mystery illness in the Grand Canyon. Did you hear about it? To my knowledge, no newspaper in America carried this except the Arizona Republic. Oh yes, last summer people became violently ill when they were rafting down the Grand Canyon. They'd never seen this before. All of a sudden they begun vomiting, diarrhea, and some had to be rushed out. And now it's gotten into Lake Mead. What is it? They don't have a name for it yet. It's still new. Next one. Okay, come on, put a smile on your face. I haven't gotten to the end yet, but when I do, we'll give you the alternative to all this. Thank you. You are a great audience. I love speaking to people in this part of the country. This one is intestinal parasite found in water amusement parks. Yes, the government went and tested the water. Chlorine was correct, pH was right, all of the chemicals were there that was supposed to be there. But you see, some bug that had been there in the past decided it would change its form. It mutated to something else, and what they were using to disinfect the water with didn't work any longer. I referred a moment ago to the book The Hot Zone by Richard Preston. I would highly recommend it for further reading. And he says, it's called the Ebola virus, and if you happen to see the movie Outbreak, you saw it take place. I know they elaborated a little bit, but Hollywood always does that. But it was for real. He said it's called the Ebola virus. If it should crash into the human race, 90% of the human population would be wiped out. It is airborne. It is extremely contagious. There is no vaccine and no known cure. Next flag. Oh yes, I'm going to quit in a moment. In fact, I think I only have one more to go after this. By the way, you do want to know the truth, don't you? You'd like me to continue? Ye shall know the truth. It's the only way to be free, because you can do something about it if you know the facts. This one is taken again from the Journal of the American Medical Association, and the title of the article is, and I doubt that you've heard about this one in any American newspaper because it hasn't gotten this far yet. It's called Cholera is Walking. Page after page in the Journal of the American Medical Association. It has gotten as far north as Mexico City. Listen to the statistics. Between 1991 and 1993, in the country of Peru, South America, 606,652 people died of this new strain of cholera. In the country of Bolivia, in 1993, 31,655 people died. Now, this is right out of the Journal of the American Medical Association. In Argentina, in 1993, 2,623 people died, and this new cholera is moving towards our southern border, has gotten as far already as Mexico City. All right, you've been waiting all this time for this. This is in the Seattle newspaper. I'm so glad we're near Seattle here. I've gotten these two articles in 1 week. That shows how concerned newspapers are. And the title of the article is, oh no, wait a minute now, I must, before I give. We're getting down to the solution now. So all of the deadly diseases that I wanted to give, I have already given. We've come down to, come on, put that big smile on your face because you have nothing to worry about. Right in the Seattle newspaper, it tells you what to do about every one of these diseases in order to overcome them. Right in your own newspaper, it tells you why you don't have to worry about any of it. Never thought I'd see it published in a newspaper. The title of the article is, "Poor Nutrition May Make Viruses Deadly." Isn't that great? And it goes on to say, if you eat right and build the immune system, you can overcome most anything. It goes on to tell it right here in the newspaper article. So may I give you a 5-point plan? Now this is what Lindsey Williams does. I would not dare say go and do this and you won't have any more effect from any of these diseases. If I did that, I would be prescribing and immediately I would be in trouble. I'm going to say I, Lindsey Williams, a year and a half ago, scared myself to death. Yeah, that's what we authors sometimes do. You know, as an author, we get most of the material we get from you. That's right. You send us newspaper articles. We start building file folders. First thing you know, we decided we need to give a lecture on it or maybe write a book on it. And I scared myself by the lecture notes I was getting on all of these new microbial mutations that were popping up around the world. And the first thing I said to myself is, I must find a way to protect my wife, my family, myself. I want to live. I'm out here on the road day after day, shaking hands with AIDS patients, getting coughed on by somebody that has a new strain of TB. Who knows what I'm going to do on board of that airplane at 30,000 feet, 80% of the air recirculated, and people are coughing all over the airplane. I come in contact with these things day after day after day. How am I going to protect myself from all of these things I face? So here's what I did. You may want to jot them down. This is what Lindsey Williams does. Number one, take responsibility for your own health. If you don't, nobody else is going to. What are the modern day wonder drugs, the magic bullets? What do they do to the immune system? What does eating right do to the immune system? Oh, I know. Those organic vegetables at the health food store are going to cost you a little more, but I guarantee you they don't cost as much as a doctor. And they're a lot less painful. In fact, they even taste good. You'd be amazed how good broccoli and cauliflower, half cooked. Don't cook it to death and then pour grease all over it like they used to do down south where I was brought up as a boy. Take responsibility for your own health. And parents, those children are your responsibility. It's up for you to decide what you're going to do about vaccinations. After all, who bore them? You or somebody else? Take responsibility for your own health. Number two, eat foods in their most natural state. Oh, it's exciting. To eat things right. We can. And it tastes so good. Number three, exercise. Doctors have known for years that bugs don't live too well in an oxygenated environment. So exercise. Get out there and breathe good air. Fortunately, you're far enough out from Seattle here that you still have some good air left. Get out there and exercise. Get that oxygen into those lungs. Number four, learn the facts. Read, read, read. Learn the issues so that you can take responsibility for that health yourself and do something about it. And number five, and I cannot leave this one off, and I'll tell you why, take time for your spiritual life. It's vital. I was doing the manuscript for this book. I was at Contreras Hospital outside of the United States of America. Dear old Dr. Ernesto Contreras is in his 70s. He's the most knowledgeable man on the face of the earth today of malignancies. And Contreras said to me one day, he said, Lindsey, I urge every person in my hospital, now this is a 4 or 5 story hospital with many, many patients. He said, I urge every person in my hospital every Sunday who can to get up out of bed and go to church. I said, but doctor, they can't understand the sermon. It's in Spanish. This was in another country. He said, it doesn't matter. He said, they still get the atmosphere. He said, Lindsey, I cannot heal a person physically until the Lord takes care of their spiritual problems.